702.
Change your mindset.
Welcome back to the Aubrey Masango Show with me, Khomozo Modise. It's 16 minutes past 10 right here on 702. And it's time now for your Change Your Mindset feature. Today we're talking about, under the theme, if you know the why, then you can deal with almost any how. And my guest this evening is Dr. Eyal Levit. He's an author of The King's Race. And it's a dynamic book really around mental strength. I'm looking forward to having that conversation with him. And I think we have him now on the line. Dr.
Yes.
Levit, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
It's a pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
It's an honor and a pleasure.
Yes, thank you so much for coming onto the show. I mean, that title, that line is really, really dynamic and it's interesting. If you know the why, then you can deal with almost any how. What do you mean by that?
Well, this is not me. This is Nietzsche who said that. But it's something that rang most deeply in my heart when I read the book by Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning. And the book goes through his own personal life experience where he saw that people who were physically well, when they felt that there was no purpose to live, suddenly died. And when we think medically, rationally, we say there's no reason. How can we explain that? And yet this was reality. And those who felt that there was something they had to survive for, this was something that was in fact allowing them, helping them to survive. And we see it in situation of hostages. We see it in situation of during the Holocaust. He was writing about his Holocaust experience. Viktor Frankl was the founder of the third school of Viennese psychology. And he asked them to allow him to keep his notes, and they laughed at him. Well, they burnt all his notes. And then afterwards, on scraps of paper, because he felt he had to write this story, he had to write this book, he survived with lack of food, with people around dying, because he felt that he knew why he's surviving, despite the inhumane experience that he endured, despite all that he learned in medical school, that people in the cold, without a shirt, with bleeding feet would not survive, and yet they survived. And this is, unfortunately, was the laboratory through which he proved the sentence by Nietzsche, which is, if you know the how, you can deal with almost any how, any kind of problem that you will face. If you know why you are going through it, if you can find your own inner strength, you can survive from it.
I mean, it sounds so beautiful, but for a person who may be going through the challenge and really trying but struggling to see the why, oftentimes we go through what we're going through and sometimes we have no idea why. There's so many examples of people that just say, even the line, why God, when people go through, tragic situations, shows that it's not so easy to know the why.
No, you're 100% right. And it's funny that you brought situations that involve God. I think the people who believe in God have an easier time allowing themselves to not try to dig themselves into a deeper hole by asking that question, why?
Yeah.
There were situations in the Jewish religion, for example. I'm Jewish. In the Jewish religion, you're not allowed to commit suicide. You're not allowed to commit suicide. But during the Holocaust, so many people wanted to commit suicide, and some people did because the torture was insane. And then there was the barbed wire that was electrical, and they could run on the barbed wire and just end their misery. But because it was not allowed, they had to force themselves to survive. And the fact that they survived, from that, we've learned so much. So when we're thinking, why do we go through this? The way I think about it, like I was taking the example of Fyodor Dostoevsky, who in his book, Brothers Karamazov, said, I pray, I hope that I'll be worthy of my sufferings. What did he mean by that? He meant by that we all go through hardships, but what defines us is how we respond to them. We have to grow from them, realizing that it's another test. Some people say God would not test us if he didn't know that we can endure it.
Yeah.
Of course, it's not fair. But you think of Job. He was such a good man. Why did things happen to him? It's not fair. Life is not fair. But if we can come out of it stronger, then we can use those lessons to help others hopefully not go through the same mistakes we did. And in my life, nothing to compare. But of course, we all go through hardships. I remember times in my life when I thought, it would be just easier for me to just disappear. And in the book that I wrote, I actually had the horse go through the same experience for different reasons, but for the same experience. And you think, child book, why would I talk about it in the children's book?
Yes.
Because I think it's so important for parents to acknowledge the fact that we all go through times of despair. How we handle that despair is so important, because if you don't, you will lose your child. Physically, emotionally, mentally, you will lose that special point where you can turn things around and make from a weakness a strength.
When we started this conversation, Doctor, you spoke about purpose. I want you to talk us through the importance of purpose to keep one going, because sometimes you may not understand the why, but you may have a sense of what you want to live for, and that keeps you going.
I love your question. What's the purpose? And I think, there are different ways that you can decide a purpose. There's a purpose for your personal, there's a purpose for your family, there's a purpose for your place in the world. And I think you need to look at purpose, the way I see it at least, like a fruit. Why does a fruit have seeds? Because it wants to make sure that it spreads if it's good. So the fruit, in order for it to open up, has to have someone who will eat it. It does not want to eat the seeds, because the seeds, even if it eats them, it will, come out of them, but because they're strong. But the fruit itself is tasty. So the goal is, if it is that good, that others will be able to benefit from the same type of fruit, and there'll be more fruits like that. So the idea is, whether you have your own children or you pass the knowledge, you pass your love, you pass the good deeds through others that you're teaching them to, you're making the world a better place. And one of the key goals, the way I see purpose, is to leave the world a better place than what we received it as. You can say we are the guardians of this amazing universe that God gave us. Or if you don't believe in God, that we're fortunate to be living at. We need to think about it that way. And every step that we do is a print on that earth. We have to be kinder. We have to try to heal people. We have to put a smile on the face. I run every morning. And one of the things that I do is I say good morning to everyone. Now, that's something that you see in the Midwest in the United States. Here in New York, initially people thought I was crazy. Like, I don't know the guy. Who's that guy? But you can see as I run every morning there, they're starting to greet me. And when I smile, they smile back. And the funny thing is, I never realized, but that little thing, not only does it put a smile on someone else, but it actually gives them a positive energy. Because if you look at the science behind it, there is dopamine, there is serotonin, there are endorphins that are being produced. All the good feel hormones actually are produced when you are smiling, when you say in a positive way a good hello. So if we can even do that little thing, that energy they will take into their home when they deal with their, child, when they deal with their husband. And the child is going to be happier. And he'll be happier. He'll be less likely to, be a bully in school. And the child he's not going to be bullied will be able to open up his potential more. He will not be lowering his eyes every time he would walk around, so that, God forbid, his gaze will not meet the gaze of the bully who would again attack him. So it's small little things that we don't even appreciate. but they have huge ramifications, whether the ramification is immediate or a few generations down the line.
Mm-hmm. And, talk to us about your book, The King's Race. How did you come up with the concept, and why do you use the analogy of horses?
I love your question. Thank you very much. So how did I come up with it is very interesting. On our car rides, and we've had with the kids a lot of long car rides, I started playing a game. And the game was, whoever wants to play the game, it's me, my wife, and my 3 children. My son now is 24, the oldest, the youngest is 14. Each one picks a word, and then we each have to make a story that includes the 4 words. And it so happened that on one of the trips, they chose king, a race, and a horse. Just simple like that. And I came up with the story. And they loved the story so much, and it was different. And years down the line, I was asked to give, like every parent, to read a book for the children in kindergarten. And my son was going to a Jewish kindergarten. The name was Mazel. Mazel is good luck kindergarten. And I went upstairs to his room, looked for a book, and I couldn't find something that spoke to me, something that mirrored the emotions that were experienced by me when my mother read to me the books written by Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin. Now, Alexander Sergeyevich Pushkin is the story of himself. The guy is the great-grandson of an Ethiopian slave who was bought as a child from the king of France. Go a few generations down the line. Well, first of all, he became the head of the navy for King Peter the Great of Russia. Later down the line, you have his great-grandchild. He becomes the #1 poet, writer of Russia. The guy changes the entire language of Russia. The language became rich and strong because of it. And his books became, wow, so colorful. And I just didn't find a book that would speak to the children the way that book spoke to me. And so that was, I think it was 5 or 6 o'clock in the afternoon, in the evening, that is. And so I went downstairs to the basement and isolated myself and started writing till about 4 o'clock in the morning. I didn't go to sleep. And then I went to the class, read it. And when I saw the smiles and the laughter of the kids, and I was making different voices of the different animals, I knew I had to finish it. The positive energy that it evoked in them, it triggered me. It pushed me to do whatever I need in order to write the book, because the book is a story about an unlikely hero, and it's through animals so that they can all identify with them. And it shows how belief in yourself, how friendship, how if you don't allow bigotry, don't allow prejudice to blind you, you're able to discover amazing worlds and be able to bring amazing benefit to everyone around you. And so I finished the book, and I'm looking forward to November when it would be shared with everybody, right in time for Christmas and Hanukkah.
Yeah. Just speak to us about some of the themes that you explore. I see you've already touched some of them, but what are the themes that are explored in this book, and how do you hope they can connect with the children that you're writing for?
That's beautiful. So the book is written on many different levels. Some levels are hidden, some levels have to be researched, but it still could be understood on any level. The book was actually printed in chapters in a newspaper, and a girl who lost her father came to me crying one day with her mom and said to me, "You know what? Actually, I'm getting tears. I'm thinking about it. When I lost my dad, and actually I knew him, he was a great man. When I lost my dad, and he was very close to me, I thought there is no reason to live. And then I read your story, and it gave me purpose again. And it showed me why I should continue living." And that one sentence from her was enough. I mean, this was, I don't know, maybe 3 years ago, but each time I remember that, I can see her in front of me and saying those words, it really speaks to me. I don't want to talk about her because she may hear about that. So her reasons why she felt that way. But the point is, it speaks to everyone, whether you're today in a good position or you were once in a bad position or experiencing the sinusoidal effects that life throws at us. You will see in that with kindness, with continued positive energy, you would be able to grow and have other. I need to make sure nobody disturbs us. Let me just make sure nobody disturbs us. So if you can do that, you will be able to make sure that you will be able not only to survive but to thrive, and not only personally. It's not about us. It's not about me. It's about the world that we're around. I think with the iPhone, right? We are so centered on the me, on the I, that we forget about the people around us. And doesn't matter how great you think you are or how successful, we're all nothing. As a matter of fact, I pray every day to God to make sure that He keeps me humble.
Yeah.
In my school, when I went to Israel, we actually had the words written on our uniform that said, "Ve'atznei lechet," which means, and you should walk humbly. Stay humble. Sometimes we don't pay attention to what is written. We take it for granted. But those words are really key to a successful future. Not only as a person, but as a family, as a nation, and as a people of the world. Because in reality, we're all brothers and sisters. Believing in the story of Genesis, if you believe in it, we were all created from Adam and Eve. Nobody asked, was Adam black? Was he white? Who cares? We're all one. We're all from the same Father. Why do we fight? Why do we look at differences? And the horse is right there to show it. So I can share a little bit if that's okay. You'll tell me if I'm revealing too much.
No,
but the horse is born in a kingdom where the horses are considered the most prized animal. And he's born to this famous horse by the name of Atlas. And Atlas has won many races. And if you win a race, the herd, and your trainer gets to be part of the king's retinue and live luxuriously in the palace. And the horse gets to be the leader of the carriage of the king and all the best things that can happen. This is something that all the parents would dream their child to compete and to win. And so when his wife, Rhea, is giving birth, everybody is coming to see who's going to be that heir, who's going to be the new, champion. And three things are required to race. One is you have to be not to cry from birth, kind of like the Spartans. As you remember in history, if the baby would cry at the beginning, they would kill the baby. They would throw him away, which now we know crying is actually healthy. That's your lungs functioning. Why would you throw the baby? It's important to actually slap them on the butt to make sure that they would spit the fluid that's collecting in their lungs. The second thing is they have to be big in size. They can't be small. And the third thing is they have to be in uniform color. They can be completely white. They can be completely black, but they can't have spots on them if they want to compete. And so he's born, and the first thing they hear is that he's crying, and they're like, ooh, well, maybe we won't pay attention to that. We could say we didn't hear it. Then they look, it's kind of looking like he's weak and he's small in size. And then the third thing is they see he's got spots. And like, holy cow, wait, they can't unsee that. And so they kind of turn away from him. The mom is trying to rub with her nose the spots as she sees that they're, unhappy with that. It doesn't work. So she uses her hooves to rub stronger, but still the spots are there. And so unceremoniously, the horse is named Spots. And so that's where its life begins, in the shadow of Atlas. And then there is this dynamic between the father and the son.
Yeah.
The father is very royal, regal. He finds that associating with his child who's got the spots, kind of like as if put spots on him. because he's uniform. He's perfect. If his son is imperfect, then maybe he's got some imperfection in him. He cannot show that. But the son looks at the father. He still doesn't understand it really. So he looks at the father. He wants to emulate him. And the father trains every morning. He runs, he does his different exercise, and he swims through a lake. So the son also wants to do that. And he one day gathers the courage to ask the dad to also join him. The dad's scared, looks around, sees if anybody noticing and not paying attention. And then when he sees nobody's paying attention, nobody's hearing because it's early in the morning and nobody's listening, nobody is awake, he's telling them, you're too small, you're too weak, you can't be with me. And he kind of pushes them away. And you see how he responds to it. Now, there are a few ways he could respond at this point. He can just, listen to the dad and just shy away and fur away. But there's something in his heart that is strong. And so what he does is he goes out, even though he's afraid of the shadows. And in the shadow, he thinks that every shadow is like a wolf or some other kind of predator that is about to attack him. He goes out and he finds it in the evening, in the night. Nobody sees his spots and he can be whoever he wants. And actually, in the shadow, he can look at the shadow. He looks much bigger, much stronger. And he starts repeating from far away whatever his dad is doing. And time goes by. And then there is this selection. The team has they have to select who's going to be preparing for the next race that will decide on the winner. And he is eavesdropping because he's curious everything his dad is doing. And as he's hearing his dad saying that, he's been the disappointment, my child has been disappointed to us, and he's weak, he can't perform, so we'll have to choose someone else. He kind of jumps in and says, why? The fact that they have a kind heart, that is not a detriment. That is not a weakness. That's not an impediment. They find that I have a kind heart or, but you have spots. It doesn't matter. I can do it, Dad. I can really win it for the team, for the herd. It's like, how can you behave like that? You interrupt us, you eavesdrop. This is the council of the elders and you coming in kind of thing. And he kind of pushes them away. They select others instead of him. And he's being sold to this farmer. And that's the only human in the story that is being spoken to by name. And in order to have it fun for my son, I named it with my last name. So the farmer Levit.
Oh, okay.
And yes. And the interesting thing there that you need to understand is there is a story in background story.
Yeah.
I'm sharing now one of the secrets just to understand the layers in there. It's not written there, but the giving birth, the pregnancy period is a 9 month for a human. But if I remember correctly, it's 11 months for a horse. And 11 months before that, the Mr. Levit, the farmer Levit, lost his son in a war, serving for the king. And when he's coming to help the other horses and the trainer offers him he can get any horse he wants, and he chooses this little horse with a weakness, and he looks at him, he's like, you sure? Is that the horse you really want? Because there are many other horses. He's like, no, that's the horse I want. And he sees in his eyes, he sees something different, because if you remember the story of David, and the first king of Israel was Saul. Saul was tall, handsome, strong. And then when he's coming to select David, he's telling him, no more, God is telling, no more am I going to look on the outside. I'm going to look on the inside. And you see the beauty on the inside. So he looks into his eyes and he sees that special soul of his son. And that's why he selects him.
I mean, you're communicating such profound themes in this book: perseverance, moral courage, transformation. All of those are just so deep and profound. How do you communicate them in this book so that children can understand them and connect with the book?
That's beautiful. I love your question. How do you communicate those values that we're trying to instill in our future generations? When I was reading the book to the kindergarten, they wanted to hear it again. When I finished it, I read it to my son and he asked it to be read again. The idea is some books you hope will be read and reread. And that's when you will be able to glean many other lessons that you did not understand before. I like to read the Bible and share what I glean from it on a weekly basis with my followers. I have a little bit over 500,000 followers, not as many as you do, and they are listening and watching it. And every time I read it, I'm fascinated because I find new messages there that I didn't read the year before. And the idea is that as we grow personally, when we hear something, we see it in the light, in the background, in the baggage, you can say, or the experience that we have attained in the time that passed between the readings. And so there are some books that you read and reread and you understand and learn from them different things. I was a history and literature major, not a science major in college. And one of the books that I was taught, and I was very fortunate to have a brilliant professor, I did the honor thesis with him in literature, was a book that was so misunderstood by many. It was called Eshel, which is a type of tree. And the person who wrote the book was called many names because they thought he was writing against the land that gave him safety and security, when in fact he was showing its beauty. And you only can see it when you read what he read, so you can understand where he's coming from. So that taught me that in order to understand someone, you need to try and go into his shoes. I lived in Africa for about 7 years. Didn't have the honor of living in South Africa, but I lived in Nigeria mostly, a little bit in Kenya, the Ivory Coast. And at the time, I was the only, white kid in the non-school. And they called me Umbakara. Umbakara in Igbo means peeled skin, like a banana.
Okay.
And it makes sense. If you skin your knee, it's little white, yellow underneath, like a banana. So I was called Umbakara. I didn't feel it was a derogatory term, but I lived with it. And I was in fights, and so I understand how you feel as a little child. I was 4 to 6 years old. Then there was a period where I was back in Israel, and then I was from the age of 9 to 13 again, 8 to 13, something like that, back again in Africa. And then it was the epidemic of the HIV was starting, and we went back to Israel. And then eventually my parents left to the United States, and I followed some years afterwards to join them. So the way that it should be understood is by parents reading it to them and discussing. Otherwise, you won't understand. And yes, sometimes the parents will read and they will miss maybe some things. And the child would ask questions. So the way that you learn is by asking questions. And the way you are leading this beautiful radio show is by asking those questions that the parents should be asking, the children should be asking as they're discussing it. So if the child doesn't ask, maybe he's shy or she's shy. Maybe they were not taught how to ask a question. There's a beautiful practice in the Jewish religion. During Passover, one of the major holidays of the Jewish religion, Jesus' holiday too, the breaking of the matzah, the bread, the supper by Michelangelo. You have right, it was Michelangelo who wrote the Great Supper, right? That was him. Leonardo da Vinci?
I think
the Great Supper. So the idea is the children, the youngest person there, is meant to ask the questions. Yeah. But the question is already written for him. The idea is, why is he then asking the question if the question is already written what to say? So he is not afraid of his own voice. So he sees how even the adults are waiting and eagerly anticipating and in fact rewarding him for asking questions.
Yeah, sure.
So we need to stimulate our children to ask questions, not to reprimand them. Because through questions, like Einstein said, most important thing is curiosity.
Yeah.
It's more important than knowledge because knowledge is finite, but imagination, curiosity is infinite.
Yeah.
And and another thing that I always quote to my children is the famous writer Mark Twain, who said, I never allow schooling to interfere with my education. I find that in schools, they put you into little boxes and they squash that imagination. So no wonder that Einstein, some say, did not do so well in school because he didn't follow the laws, the rules. But his imagination allowed him to look beyond those rules and to find those laws that are of relativity, which is really something that we all now take for granted. It's so obvious. But back then, like the world is round, was not obvious.
Yeah. Dr. Eyal Levit, we have run out of time, but thank you so much for such a fruitful conversation. Please just let us know, where can our listeners get in touch with you if they want to get in touch?
Well, there are a few ways they can get in touch with me. One is they can get in touch with the Instagram at Levit Dermatology, Levit Dermatology, or they can get in touch with the phone, which is our office phone number, which is Brooklyn, New York. It's 718-375-7546. They can send us an email to skin, S-K-I-N, at levitdermatology.com.
So hopefully you heard at least my side. Hopefully it was helpful to you. It was such an enjoyable event, such an enjoyable opportunity to talk about my book, and you can hear the entire book interview on 702 Talk Radio. Thank you.